Okay, today we're going to do lesson 5.7, transformation with quadratic functions. We did something similar to this in lesson 2.7, so you might want to try to look and see if you have your notes from 2.7. Today we're looking at vertex form because that makes it a lot easier for us to graph a function if it's in vertex form. So copy down the highlighted information. And then these are the notes from 2.7. If you have 2.7 notes and you already have this written down, you don't need to write it down again. Just put a note in there referencing you back to 2.7. If you don't have 2.7 notes, you will want to write this down. Okay, so we are going to take a quadratic function that is in standard form, and we're going to write it into vertex form. So what we need to do is something similar to completing the square. So remember when we did completing the square, we did 2 divided by 2, the b value cut in half, that's 1, and then if we square it, does that equal c? It does not. So what we're going to do instead is write x squared minus 2x, and then put the 4 over here just a little bit more. And what number do we actually want to see there? We would like to see 1 squared. So we're going to just write in there plus 1. Actually, I'm going to write that in a different color. If you have a different color, you should write it in like that as well. Okay, now you can't just go ahead and add 1 to the equation because it unbalances it. Now when completing the square, we would add 1 to the other side. But we don't want to put plus 1 over by y. So instead what we're going to do on the same side, at the end, we're just going to minus 1. So if I add 1 and minus 1, it's like canceling each other out. So now we can complete the squared. So something squared, and then these two at the end will make plus 3. Well, what's being squared? X is being squared, then it's a minus, then 1 was being squared. So y equals x minus 1 quantity squared plus 3. So that's our vertex form. And now with this, we know that the vertex is at positive 1, 3. Because it's always the opposite right here for our x, and then it is the actual k value over there for our y. Okay, let's try another one. This one's a little more difficult because it has that 3 in there. So what we're going to do, just looking at this section right here, we're going to factor out a 3, and actually I see that they have a negative in common as well. So let's factor out a negative 3. Then I'm going to get an x squared minus, nope, I factored that out, so it's plus 6x. Leave that space, and we're just going to keep that 10 hanging out at the end. Okay, now we have to figure out what should go there. So we take 6 divided by 2, and then square it, and that should go right there. So we need to add 9. Now again, do that in a separate color if you have something different there. Now we can't just add 9 because that would make the equation unbalanced. So we need to also subtract it off. But now keep in mind, we weren't just adding 9. We were adding 9 times negative 3. So we really added 9 times negative 3. So we really added negative 27. So if we add negative 27, we actually have to go back and do the opposite. So we should, which was subtracting 27. So now we have to add 27 to make it balanced. All right, and then we can write it. Y equals negative 3, something squared, and then the end was 37. And what was being squared? X was, the next symbol there is a plus, and then 3 was being squared. So that is our vertex form. Okay, so let's analyze this graph. So negative 3, that's our a value. The way that that works is the bigger the number, it's going to be a steeper slope. So this has a steeper slope. then its parent function. And also because it's negative, it means that it is reflected over the x-axis. Then the 3. The 3 shifts it left and right. So this is, when it's in the parentheses, it's opposite of what we think. So since it's a plus 3, it's going to shift it left 3. And then the 37, the number at the end, which is our k value, will shift it up or down. And this one goes the way we expect it. So this one shifts up 37. So that's how you analyze it. You just explain what the 3 numbers represent. Okay, this is very helpful when you are looking at a graph and trying to figure out what is the correct equation. So this is more of just a matching one. So we first find our vertex, which is right there. And the vertex is -1, 2. So we know that it has to be x something squared, and then it has to be the +2 at the end. This one is opposite of what it should be, so it would be +1. So looking at these options, this one does not work, that one does not work, and that one does not work. Negative told us that it was flipped upside down. And then typically a graph goes over down 1 over 1, and then down or over 2 down 4. But this graph went over 1 down 3. Over 1 down 3. That's where the 3 came from. And now let's make a graph. Okay, so we have to write this in vertex form first. So we start by factoring out a -2. So we really don't want x squared to be negative. So then we'd get x squared minus 2x. And we only wanted to factor out this section right here. That 1 we're just going to leave at the end. All right, then we take 2 divided by 2, which is 1, and square it. That number goes up there, plus 1. But remember, we're not actually just adding 1. We are adding -2 times 1. So we really subtracted off 2. So to undo that, we have to add 2 at the end. So then we can write it, -2, something was being squared, and then plus 3. And then we can write this as x, next is a minus. What was squared to make 1? 1 was. Okay, so we start by finding our vertex. So this tells me to move right 1. And then this tells me to move up 3. So right 1, up 3, put a dot for our vertex. Now the number out in front is our slope. Generally for a parabola, I would go over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1 when it's negative. But because it's a slope of -2, I'm going to go over 1, down 2. And then normally I would go over 2, down 4, because 2 squared is 4. But since it's a slope of 2, I now go down 8. So the black dots are the parent function. The green dots are our functions points. And that would be the graph of the equation that we were given. Okay, that is the end of lesson 5-7. Write your questions and your summaries and let me know if you have any questions when you get to class.